Hey guys, Kirk from the Forever Homestead. So it was a bit of a long winter, and over that winter I tried to find some ways to entertain myself when the snow was just too deep or too cold, or basically I was just too much of a wimp to go outside. One of the things that I started to do was basically ferment stuff. It started with some probiotic soda and stuff, and very recently I've started to do some home brew beer type stuff, some all grain beer. So I thought, instead of everything being about building right now, I'm going to do a small little mini series, so to speak, every once in a while. Not all the time, but every once in a while I'll put a new video out. It'll be over and above the regular videos we do, but it's going to be about some of the things that I've been fermenting. To start with, I'm going to do one on the probiotic soda that we've been making. I've done a root beer and a ginger ale. It's been a bit of a learning curve. I started by doing 3 gallons of root beer, and I ruined it twice. And the ingredients for the root beer are a little bit expensive. By the time you add everything up, you know, because everything, a lot of it we don't have around here, like sassafras and sarsaparilla and all that kind of stuff. So then Jessica suggested, just like when she does her kombucha, that we do it as like just a 2 quarts at a time. And that's worked out pretty well. It only makes about 3 bottles, but it's, instead of like making one that's horrible and having to throw it away, or one that doesn't ferment, and if it doesn't ferment, it means that it's not carbonated, and it's just wasted. But I've done, probably about a dozen batches so far of both of them, and I've finally figured out between the 2 of them. So I'm going to do my final batch of 2 quarts of it, and then I'm going to try to start stepping the recipe up, doubling it and stuff like that, to try to make a lot more of it at once. So instead of, it's a little bit time consuming, not a whole lot, but by the time you're done and you have 3 bottles of it, so it'd be nice to be able to make, you know, like a dozen bottles of it and kind of put it in a fridge or in a cold storage or something like that, and just know that it's there. So I am going to start right from the beginning and bring you guys along. So the first thing that we need is it's called a soda bug, or a soda starter, whatever you want to call it. And it's pretty simple to make. It's basically 3 ingredients. You've got some water, you've got some organic ginger or fresh ginger, and you have water, and that's about it. So ginger, sugar, water. So I'll just show you what I got here. So I've got just a piece of ginger from the grocery store. Organic's best. Basically, you just want to make sure it's not too bad with this, but you just want to make sure by doing organic, you know that it's not irradiated, and if they irradiate it, it actually takes away the healthy bacteria that we want on it. You can also use, the first bunch of them, I use this just an organic ground ginger. This works as well. I like using this better because there's not as much sediment in the bug or the soda starter when you're using it. And because of the recipe I'm using now, or that I've developed, I kind of add this to my soda in a different way that a lot of people show to. I guess the one thing about it that they call it a bug, basically what we're doing is shredding this ginger, and then putting it in water, and then feeding it some sugar. And every day you do the same thing. You shred another tablespoon or 2 of fresh ginger, and you add 2 tablespoons of sugar to that every day. They say between 4 and 7 days. I find it's actually best, at least in our house, maybe because it's a little cooler here, or colder in our house. Over 7 days I find is best. And then once you're done the soda, if you use that, like keep it alive until the next time you make it, it gets even better and better. Kind of eventually it starts to flavor the soda a little bit more than I like, so I started fresh again this time. So yeah, basically I've got a shredder here. I'm just going to shred up about 2 tablespoons of this, and I have my cup of water here, and we'll get started on it. Some people, through researching it, some people cut the skin off of it or take the skin off and all that kind of stuff. I find it really doesn't affect the flavor at all, and it's a little bit less work, which makes it a lot more repeatable, especially through the summer when I'm, don't have a lot of time to do it, but, I still want to be able to sit down on the porch with a nice cold non-alcoholic beverage. But yeah, let's get started. I don't know if I can set you down and do this or what, but let's see what's going on here. So I've got, roughly 2 tablespoons here. It's not too scientific. I don't actually measure it out anymore. I did it first, especially when I was using the powder, but now I know roughly what it looks like. And as far as this goes, I don't actually do much with it. I mean, it's winter, so I'm not too worried about bugs. Eventually, I'll probably have to, cover it up or something, but I just usually just set it back in the bowl here, and it's tomorrow when I do this again, I'll actually cut the skim because it kind of hardens up over it. This will kind of harden up, and I'll just cut that off and start fresh from there. But basically, we're going to add our cup of water. And we're going to add in our ginger. And then we're going to add in just 2 tablespoons of white sugar. You can use honey. There are some other, like I've tried different organic sugars and sugar cane and all that. Basically, I like this just because I don't like the organic sugar or the I forget what they call it, the sugar cane stuff as much. I find it makes the soda taste fake. I don't know. Honey works really well. That does taste good. And in my recipe, I actually add honey to that. So if you're like health conscious and all that, and you're worried about eating white sugar, you're not actually eating this. You're not consuming that white sugar. What we're doing is creating a great environment for the probiotic, the bacteria that we're trying to bring to life in large quantities. They're eating that white sugar. So if you want to make this as a more natural recipe, now is not really the time that you have to worry about adding white sugar or honey or whatever it is you're adding. This is just to feed the bacteria. So that's basically it. Now I take a piece of cheesecloth, double it up and put that over the top of it. And because we live in a colder, like our house is pretty cool here, we actually put it up on a seeding mat. So it's something that gardeners use when they're starting their seeds inside. It's just a mat. You can set the temperature to we usually set ours to about 20 or 21 degrees and set this on it. In the summertime, I might worry more and actually put the solid top back on it just because you don't want fruit flies and all that kind of stuff swarming around it. But I haven't experienced that yet, so I can't really talk about it. But I'm going to, I'll be back to you in about a week, and I'll show you how this is all going. So our starter bug has been sitting for about a week. It's bubbling really well. I'll show it to you once we get to that step. But today we're gonna start the 2 different batches. Again, we're just gonna do small 2-quart batches just for the final time. If this all works out, then I'm gonna move them both up to probably 1 gallon or 2 gallons, just so I don't have to do this as often. So yeah, we're gonna do 2 different ones today. We're gonna do our ginger beer or ginger soda, whatever you want to call it, and we're gonna do a root beer. So I'm just gonna get some things set up and I'll get back to you. Okay, so what we're gonna do here, I've made the ginger beer a few times. probably like half a dozen, maybe a little bit more. The last time I made it a little bit different. So I like my ginger beer really strong. I like it so the ginger, punches you in the back of the throat. So I like a lot of ginger in it. But the last one I made, it was a lot more bitter. But I don't know if that's just from the lemon. Not really bitter, more like I don't know, sour. I'm not sure what the word is. But definitely stronger. Not strong ginger, but strong tart, I guess is the way to do it, or way to say it. And the one thing that I did change in it was I watched a couple other people make it, and they do kind of boil some of it. So they cut some ginger up and they boil it for 15-20 minutes to really draw the ginger out. But I did that different, and I think that's kind of all. Before I rule that out, I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna use more ginger and less lemon this time, but I'm gonna try that again. And if it turns out the same as my last one, it wasn't terrible. It just wasn't my favorite. So, but I'm gonna try it one more time that way. And if that doesn't work, then I know to pull out the boiling of the ginger first. So I've got almost 2 liters of water in this pot. This is gonna be for my root beer. And I've got just over a cup of water in the other one. That's for my ginger beer. So I'm gonna get both of these pots boiling, and then we can add some ingredients in. All right, so I've got the 1 cup of water boiling, and then I've just got a quarter of a cup of ginger. I just shred it up. Again, I just clean the ends up of it. I leave skin and stuff like that on it. I don't find it changes the flavor at all. So I'm going to put that in the water, and then I'm going to simmer that on. I'm going to simmer that for about probably 20 minutes. Really see if I can get the ginger out of it. Okay, so the other pot is coming to a boil, so I'm going to start to add my ingredients. So first we have sassafras, quarter of a cup. This stuff smells awesome. It smells like mega root beer. I just buy it online. This one is from Star West Botanicals. It's the cheapest one I can get in Canada. And then we put in a quarter of a cup. Then we put in a quarter of a cup of wintergreen. This is just a tea, wintergreen tea. Just looks like tea leaves, kind of. I'll put a link to these ingredients that I use in the description. What else we got here? We put in, so this is licorice root. Put in a tablespoon of licorice root. Half a teaspoon. So this is just ground up licorice root. Put in 1 cinnamon stick, just regular from your grocery store. And this is sarsaparilla root. This one's tough. It puts if you put a really small amount in, it puts kind of a nice flavor in it. When I first found a recipe that I started to use, I used what they suggested, which was 4 times more than I use, and it overpowered the whole drink. So I just use a small little piece, like that size, even a little bit smaller, like that. Not a lot. I have it written as it's like an 1/8 or a quarter of a teaspoon, so not much at all. Unless you like the flavor of that really strong, but I'm not a huge fan. And then this is cherry, wild cherry bark, and I put in a teaspoon of this. Okay, then we just bring that to a simmer. It's just like a tea. Alexa, start a timer for 20 minutes.
Second timer, 20 minutes, starting now.
So the ginger is ready. It's boiled for 20 minutes. I don't know if you can see that. Kind of makes like a dark ginger. So what I do first, so I have a jar. It's just filled with sterilizing solution right now. Some people don't do this step just because you're making such a small batch. It's not really storing. It's not doing anything like that. I kind of recommend it. I made one of my first batches of root beer. It went moldy while it was fermenting. Now it was a big batch. It was 3 gallons of it. And I think there was some other contributing factors. Didn't have an airlock, things like that. I just had it wrapped with cheesecloth. But like I say, if you get any other kind of bacteria in there, except for the bacteria that we want from our ginger bug, any airborne bacteria, anything like that, it is going to change the flavor of your beverage. Even if it doesn't spoil it or make it so it's going to hurt you or anything, it is going to change the flavor. Definitely for bigger batches, I always sterilize. But just over the winter, I've learned for the couple of seconds it takes to sterilize, you get a big bag of this sterilizing stuff from any home brews. Like if you have a local homebrew place, you can buy it online. It's cheap. Like I say, $10 for a giant bag of it, and you use like a half a teaspoon, if that. I think you use a tablespoon for 23 liters, so 5 gallons. So some people save it. I mix mine up and I use it for that day, and then when I'm done for that day, I just dump it out and make up some new stuff. It's a contact sterilizer, so it sits in here for 2 minutes, and then you can dump or you can get rid of it. It's a no rinse solution, so you don't have to rinse the jars before you use it. It's not going to hurt anything you put into it. Since I'm using 2 of these, one for each recipe, I'm just going to dump this bottle into this other one and let it sit for a couple of minutes. So now we have our clean, sterilized jar. We're going to dump the liquid and the ginger from this stuff that we made up. I'm going to dump that into the jar. Alexa, stop. That means our root beer is ready too. Okay, so now we're going to top this up most of the way with just tap water. If you're in the city, you can, use bottled water or dechlorinizer water. You don't want the chlorine in it because the chlorine is going to kill the bacteria. Out here, we're from a well. Our well water is good. So I don't add anything to it, but if you do have chlorine, either add some, I forget what they're called. There's a tablet you can add or drops you add, same thing as you do for a fish tank, or just, fill your jars the day before and just let them sit on your counter and the chlorine will off-gas out of it. Okay, so then to this, for the ginger, we're going to add 1 cup of grated ginger. Like I say, this is kind of a personal taste thing. I like mine to punch me in the back of the throat, so I like it gingery. In this one, we also want 1/3 cup of sugar. This is a personal taste thing. If you don't like white sugar, you can use like the cane sugar or anything like that. I find that cane sugar adds a funny artificial flavor to it. So from the recipe that I originally started to use, I've kind of toned down the sugar that's added. I think they were adding, I don't know, 1 cup or something like that, but that was too sweet for me. So I add 1/3 cup. Mix that in. And remember, when you're adding the sugar, it's not all for you. This sits for a few days to ferment and all that kind of stuff, so the yeast is actually eating a lot of the sugar that's in there. So if you have a lot of yeast, you may end up having to change your sugar content a little bit. Again, that might be what happened to my last one. My starter bug could have been really active and ate a lot of the sugar, and that's why it was a little bit more bitter. But it's all a learning game. I put in 2 tablespoons, roughly. This isn't a scientific measurement or anything. I put in 2 tablespoons of natural honey. So then you want to stir that in really well. Okay, so I didn't add a lot of hot water or anything to this, but I do take a temperature. Before you add the starter bug, you want to make sure it's below about 21 Celsius, which is I think like 70 or something in Fahrenheit, because you don't want to kill off the bacteria that's in here. So I just sterilized a strainer in a bowl. So for the ginger beer, or for the root beer, we're going to take our the ginger mixture that smells awesome. It smells like ginger, or it smells like root beer. But I'm going to strain it into this bowl and get all the wood and all that kind of stuff out of it. All the ingredients. I don't squeeze it or anything. Some people say that releases some of the bitterness, the tannins and the bitterness if you squeeze it all out. So I just let it strain out, and that's it. So while you have your liquid hot, it's good to add your sugar and your honey and stuff like that into this one right now, because it melts, or it dissolves quicker. So for the root beer, we add in a cup of sugar. I also add a tablespoon of honey to this one, just because I like the sweetness of it. Honey's got all kinds of good health benefits, and I also think that it helps to keep the ginger bug healthier and alive. Before I was doing that, I was having a hard time keeping it active. So this one is really hot because it boiled and we didn't add any hot water to it. So with this one, we are going to pour it into the jar we're going to use, and then let it cool for a couple hours. Ow. Okay, so we're just going to set this aside, let it cool. It'll take a few hours with this. After about an hour or so, I'll actually put something over the top so nothing can get into it. Right now, if anything gets in it, it's too hot anyway. But I'm going to let both of these cool and I'll check back in. Okay, so last step for the ginger beer is to add the bug, and I usually put in 1 lime and 1 lemon. But I forgot to get some lime, some new lime. The stuff I had was rotten. So we're gonna squeeze in our lemon juice. Last time I did 2 lemons. Well, most of the times I did 2 lemons, but like I say, last time it was really bitter, or tart, or whatever you want to call it. So I'm only gonna do 1 this time and see how it works out. So here's the ginger bug. I showed you the starter, how to make it, and I've just been adding the ginger and the sugar to it every day. So now I pour half a cup of it in here. You can strain out the bits of ginger that go into there, but I just add it in. I feel like it doesn't hurt it. If anything, it's going to help it. So I put that in there. I give it another quick stir. Now there's lots more sugar, lots more ginger in this for the bug to kind of latch onto. Cheesecloth is cheap, so I take a J-cloth. I reuse this, but I just put a new piece of cheesecloth underneath it to make sure that, you know, nothing nasty is getting into it. And then Just put the ring on it, keep that in place. And then I set this up on my seating mat. I'll put a link to all these ingredients and stuff down in the description. I'll also throw the link to the seating mat in case you have the same problem I did with cold temperatures and all that kind of stuff. These seating mats, they use next to nothing for hydro, and they work really well. Alright, so it's been a couple hours. Everything's cooled down now. Gave it a good stir. So what we're going to do now is I add like half a teaspoon, or probably a teaspoon or so of ginger. And I add half a cup, let's put it in this one. I add half a cup of my starter bug. Again, if the ginger comes out, it's not a big deal. Okay, then it's almost all the way up here, so I'm just going to top that up with just some warm water. So now that those are ready to go, we'll get them up on the heating pad. With your ginger bug, I usually keep it alive again. So I replace, so in this case I've taken out about a cup of water. So I put that back in, roughly not quite the full amount. And then I put in 2 tablespoons, I put in some about 2 more tablespoons of ginger. I put in another tablespoon or 2 of sugar and mix it all up. And then over the next few days, I'll do the same thing. I'll keep feeding it like I have been, but I'll also just add a little bit extra water so that gets up more. You can keep these ginger bugs, once they're started, as long as you keep feeding them, they're gonna stay alive. I haven't been doing it too long, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months now. And just because I'm not sure, like I say, on that last batch of ginger beer I made, things got really tart, really, you know, really sour, whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure if that was because the ginger bug was so concentrated. So I just started again, and we'll kind of run a whole bunch more tests and make a bunch more, and we'll just kind of figure it out as I go along. But I've seen other people online and reading blog articles and stuff like that. People keep these things alive indefinitely, you know, for years. So I guess I'll keep playing with it, and if you want to make it and keep playing it, or if you know the answer, you know, comment down below. Basically what we're going to do now as far as the sodas go, I'm going to put them up on the heating mat. The ginger one sits there for probably both of them. They're going to sit there for 2 or 3 days, kind of depends on the activity I see in it. And then we're going to bottle them. Get about 2 or 3 bottles, usually 3 or 4 bottles for each of these, depending on how much liquid is absorbed by the ginger. And then we put those in the fridge.